Hello, everybody. Big welcome. We're just going to let people file in here. We should have around, probably 40 to 50 people here today or more. So we're going to let people catch up. A lot of people are watching during their Pacific Coast lunchtime.
Happy hour here, by the way. Literally just clicked over to happy hour, man.
Jerry is in Philly.
3:05.
Yes. Or, new parents, it's like, approaching dinner time. And,
Right.
we used to eat when our son was first born. We would eat dinner at like 4:30.
I love it.
Your schedule's so off, like you're on on New York or London time. I don't know what time we're on. All right, well, we'll get kind of started here. I'm super excited. Jerry and I were talking offline before the webinar started, and this is our first event that we've had where Jerry is a clinician, but we're doing a topic that's not physical therapy or surgical related. So it's kind of more aimed for the business owners and the managers and the front office staffs around the country on how they can kind of better things. But kind of a brief background on Jerry. And I had a chance to meet him at a Portland conference. I believe that was like in 2013, that was hosted down there. And he's just been a great resource for clinicians all over the country. But he, kind of began, early days in the Napa Valley, working in the vineyards. His parents were, you can clarify me on this or correct me, but they were highly involved in the vineyards and in the whole processes of winemaking. You kind of opted not to go that route, much like my parents were in airlines, and
my God, no way. I was outside in the vineyards, driving tractors, doing that. I was like, I got to keep my ass in school. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, that will do it. A good, super hard manual labor job in the hot sun will kind of really help the reading and the book time at the library. So obviously great upbringing, super beautiful part of the country in Napa, that whole region. I've got family ties there as well. After graduation, you also, kind of did some stuff, and like many of us in the sports field, played the sports, but also worked in the training room, which is where I got my start as well. Went to physical therapy school, came out, and after a period of time, did some inpatient, did some outpatient, and then began a very successful group of clinics in San Francisco called San Francisco Sport and Spine, managed multiple clinic locations, tons of staff, worked with another friend, Sturdy McGee, there too. And we have a lot of connections in San Francisco together. And so it's kind of fun to have you on the webinar. What really prompted this was, besides loving Jerry's content online, which is very manager and front office focused, which I think is a huge blind spot for most owners that I talk to, that I consult with, that I've had the pleasure of meeting. I think you kind of bring it to the forefront. You make it cool, I guess. And you're kind of an outlier from a physical therapy and like an APTA standpoint, even though you are involved in it, is that you have like really great, concise marketing. So it's really clean, really crisp. And so I think that was something that would kind of, I thought, be of value to our staff, to people around the PT group, and others that might want to explore a relationship or get some questions from you answered. So with that being said, first thing, housekeeping, and that is use the Q&A if you have questions that come across. People did send questions in ahead of time, so we'll be kind of working our way through those as well. But don't hesitate. If it seems like it's a logical part of where we're at conversation wise, then we'll jump on that as well. So this is the first of a 3-part series that we'll do over the next course of months, but this first one is on arrival. So really the focus being on how do we get, we're kind of assuming that the funnel has already kind of been set. We've got the person kind of, working their way towards the decision of physical therapy. How do we get them to actually show up at the clinic and, get squared away on a plan of care, and then, kind of working our way towards completion of that plan of care. Second in the series will be pay. How do we, and Jerry can go into more detail at the end of the webinar, but how do we get people to pay, and what's the least friction and the most efficient for both the customer and for the clinic. And then the final one is stay, and that's kind of completion of plan of care and probably really kind of the reactivation. You're basically setting the groundwork for reactivation. So that's kind of our teaser or my plug for the other two. This one, again, we're talking arrival. So I'll let you kind of chime in a little bit, and I have questions that we already kind of have gotten sent in, and you can kind of start digging into those.
You have a question?
I do. So,
yeah.
So
are there any questions?
So hopefully everyone's clear on that. So the first kind of get the ball rolling, kind of what are you seeing or be the three, if you had to put three kind of your main or most important things to look at when starting this process of kind of doing the forensics and kind of breaking down or doing some self-reflection of your front office and your business practices and processes?
So it's a great question. And fortunately, had done some work on this weekend. So here's the thing. Oh, let me look at the book real quick. Hold on. The 4 Disciplines of Execution. My bookshelf's right here, right? And this really came out, and this was a big tipping point for me in this world of understanding how to manage a person moving through a journey in a business. And yes, all those words were very purposeful. And this 4 Disciplines of Execution was an excellent book that I recommend to anybody, because it really pulled a lot of things together. This connectedness I talk about of a patient's journey. How does the front desk connect with the providers, connect with the billing team, connect with the assistants, connect with the aides, right? How can we connect all this together? So of the 3 things, the most important thing to start with is a common team goal. And this is missing so many places, right? So a common team goal, and let's just use physiotherapy practice, right? Like a completed plan of care is about the bestest common goal I could come up with, because a completed plan of care becomes a business and it becomes a patient success metric. So we need this high level metric. Then what I need next is to understand the patient's life cycle. What are the touch points and interactions this person is going to have, and with whom in my business, electronically, right? Any of it, all the way through from initial contact through a completed course of care, and then beyond, even into activation. But really, we're going to talk about that. And then the third thing, so we need this common team goal, right? That everybody's moving towards. We need to understand the patient's life cycle within the business practice clinic we created. And then lastly, we need to understand the experience. Here we go. The experience we want to create for this person, because the experience is what you are going to create your systems and your processes around. So I understand their journey and I say, okay, during this part, I want these good things to happen. That I insert the systems and processes into my patient's journey to arrive at this patient experience that will deliver that common goal. And that connects everybody in the business together. So those are the 3 things, right? We must start with.
What do you think, just to kind of play off of that too, what is the shortcomings or what's the pitfall for companies not kind of having a goal or a focus? Like where is that falling through? Is it busyness or is it just lack of awareness?
Yeah. So I just had a meeting this morning with a brand new group that I onboarded, and I met with their front desk team. And there's no, and bear with me on this, because I will never throw a front desk person under the bus. I will always throw the owner and the clinic manager and the front desk manager under the bus. I never will throw, right, all the secret callers, everything. So I've never met a front desk person that wasn't busy, and legitimately they're busy. Yet that word busy says you're telling me you don't really understand what your responsibilities and tasks are and the accountabilities that lead to the next step, what you're doing. And everybody who's busy, they're running around because the owner, the clinic manager, hasn't given them this bigger goal, hasn't told them their accountabilities. They give them a bunch of tasks, say, get these done every day. So I guess I can get paid. So what do? You keep yourself busy. So that, to me, calling, I posted the other day, I did a secret caller about 2 weeks ago, and I posted afterwards, and it wasn't dramatic. It was like, the first phone call is a look. I'm looking straight into the soul and the culture of your business. And when that thing is sporadic and about the business and there's dead air and I hear typing and I get to the end and everything was about you, then I already know what I'm showing up for.
Right. Right. Yep. I think the person on that first call too, they want to share a little bit about their case, even though I know the front office person is not going to be the person treating them, most likely, unless it's a single practitioner office, which we've both been in before. In that case, it was the case. But it makes you feel heard for sure. And that, I think that probably your arrival rate, which is something we'll talk about later, has to improve just on that alone.
Yeah, and it will. And so what I've done, right? So I think you brought up a great point of Ben just saying that this person wants to be heard and they do want to share a little bit. And here's the kicker. As a person, this was another huge tipping point in my understanding of this and the ability to do better work for my clients. When someone is moving through their journey within your practice, there are business objectives. So here's their journey. There are business objectives that need to be met at every step, and there are patient objectives that need to be met at every step. And a lot of you are probably going, duh, and I agree with you. Yet until you really internalize that and go, holy shit, and then understand that at many steps, they're in total opposition of each other. Let me give you the perfect example. There is nobody on the face of the earth that has ever called a doctor's office and said, I want to do paperwork. But every doctor's office on the face of the earth will tell you about the paperwork you have to do. Now, what I'm telling you is not to get rid of I'm not telling you to get rid of your paperwork. I'm telling you, you need to understand those are in opposition. So when I work on the front desk process and the conversation to make it more about Ben and less about me, is I need to understand that this is in opposition of what they want. So I structure it around, so Ben, let me tell you what's going to happen next. I'm going to send you 4 pieces of paperwork, and I'm going to tell you what each of those is about and why it's important to you. Now I'm off script. That all is going to take 30 seconds. And by the way, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to make sure Ben understands this place is about him, and it's going to get him to complete his paperwork. So I didn't take the paperwork out. I didn't move it in the process. I just made the conversation about him. And now I'm going to get completed paperwork and more buy-in on someone who knows they're in the right place. So
well, I think too, to that point, like you're almost selling, it sounds silly, but you're selling the paperwork. I think if you can let them know that their first visit will actually have more meaningful content.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell them why the paperwork's for them, right? And then I'm also going to tell them, because what happens next is I've already pitched them on their expert in that hour. So before I hang up, I'm going to reference the paperwork and again, why it's important so that you will get your hour with your expert, Dr. Jane Doe, right? So it's this coming together of all these touch points, taking a step back. I got to get to a completed plan of care. Well, if I go to the front desk in the first phone call, what has to happen, right? I start checking these boxes. Well, what has to happen for the business? What has to happen to get the patient to arrive? Because by the way, sending people paperwork has 0 to do with getting someone to arrive, if you think about it. So you got to back it up and go, okay, yes, there are business objectives and patient objectives. So how am I going to check all these boxes
right
as efficiently as possible?
Yeah. And I think, like for our staff too, we'll get that paperwork usually 48 to 72 hours ahead. And which I think, the therapists, hopefully we've mentored them well over the years, and they want to look at that ahead of time too and see, okay, is this a calf strain or is this something that's referred from the lower back? Like you can start to kind of really make a much more efficient first visit when you kind of prep and have that ability to kind of look at that stuff ahead of time. I guess for like for clinical managers in front office that are kind of on the call or might hear this, what do you feel like as you kind of approach this process? What are some of the first steps that you kind of look at, or how do and I guess maybe this is the complicating thing too. What if someone's here on a front office call and or a clinic manager, and they have to report this to the owner? How do they talk about addressing some processes in kind of a tactful, efficient, and productive way?
So if you're currently listening to this and you're what I call a front desk, this is kind of a broad term, we get it, but if you work the front desk or if you manage a front desk, the goal of this work is to make the process more efficient. So if we understand this patient journey, and from the front desk, don't forget it starts at the front desk. By the way, go back and tell the person who you want to do this work, or you want them to do this work, or you want to improve this, go, by the way, I am the entry point to the business, and I actually have the biggest impact on a completed course of care. And you heard that right. So I'm a provider, and I also I took calls for a year. I took all the new patient calls for a year in my business, and I did the cost callbacks. And without the first phone call, and without managing and setting expectations properly, what are we going to have later? We're going to have drop-offs. We're going to have cancels. We're going to have no-shows. The impact that this first phone call in this pre-arrival phase has on the course of care is going to return a huge ROI, return on investment, both in time, money, and energy to the business as a whole. So if you are at the front desk, say, I've got a way to increase the efficiency of moving someone through a course of care. So it requires less time, money, and energy as the business as a whole. Right now, the way tasks and duties are, when people don't come with this mindset, right? We got all these tasks and duties for the front desk. Then we got all these tasks and duties for the providers. There is way more overlap than anybody knows, just like the paperwork conversation, right? Having people show up with their paperwork done day in and day out, patient after patient, equals big things. Also, this conversation increases first visit arrival, right? Agreed upon plans of care. So the impact on the business from the front end side is huge. It's just huge.
Yeah. And what we found is when we digitized our new patient paperwork, and we're actually using a product out of Austin right now called Form Doctor, which is a nice product. It's not super fancy, pretty easy to use. But what we found is that, if you're not filling out that paperwork ahead of time, the chances of you actually doing your home exercise program,
there you go,
are very, very low. And if for some, if that's a deterrent to even fill out the paperwork and explain your situation, then you're probably not the type of patient we're really looking for.
And that's a good point. That's a good point, right? So the better we manage this upstream, and we put these, let's call it automation, in place, it's still about managing and setting expectations. Yep. So back to what Ben just said, part of the work I do, and to get people to understand, is not everybody you talk to today should go on this schedule, which stops everybody dead in their tracks. I'm like, I know, because here's the deal. Here's the other thing that's going to happen for those who are doing the work that we're talking about today. Go back and ask your clinic manager, go back and ask the owner, and most of you already know the answer to this, but I want them to have to say it out loud in front of you, and ask them, what is my primary role at this front desk, right? And when they tell you it's to get people scheduled, ask them, well, how does that help, right? How does that help to facilitate a process, right? What happens next? What happens next? What happens next, right?
Right. Yeah, I think get them on that same plane, on the same goal. And maybe kind of going back to your first comment too, having that goal, is that something you would suggest clinics, setting aside time and meeting as a group, or how would you, what's the best practice that you've seen done for goal setting or kind of expectation setting? And another side thing on that too, just while I'm thinking of it, is that I think you've been very great on social media and things about setting expectations. And I think when you do that, not to interrupt my own question, but I think you do a great job of that. And I think more people need to do that on setting expectations. Because if you don't set them for them, they'll set their own, and they could be low, they could be high. You don't really know.
So let's go back, get the team together, right? Because we're going to talk about, I thought you were going to set expectations with the team, and I agree.
You're going all over.
I've got some clients who are just kicking butt right now because they're executing on this stuff. And what they've done over time is, right, you break this big picture out to the whole team. So, by the way, I'm a sports fan, and you don't need to understand sports, because whatever you like, unless it's like an individual, but a team sport. Every team sport I know does a great job on bringing the team together, putting the big overarching goal up. We talk about it. We talk about the certain roles, how the team's going to come together and do this. And then what do? You break the team apart, right? The linemen go this way, the running backs go this way, the outfielders go this way, the infielder goes this way. But only after we got the team together and go, okay, this month, this week, this is what we're working on as a team. And because of this process, everybody knows their role when you're coming together to achieve this. And they're thinking about other people, right? I always give the example, the left tackle doesn't need to know, right, how to throw a football or run a football, but he has to know when the play's called, what is his job, so that that can happen. That's the way I look at this. So you bring the team together and say, look, we're going to connect the dots in this patient's journey within our practice. We're going to understand, everybody's going to understand, they don't have to be able to execute it, but everybody needs to understand what steps is someone going through to get them to arrive, not scheduled, by the way. The goal is arrival, right?
Well,
and everybody needs to see those steps. And then we need to talk about what's it going to take to get them to buy in and agree to a plan of care. Then what's it going to take to get them to agree to a course of care? Everybody needs to hear this. And then just real quick to finish this, because this guy's a couple people doing an excellent job at this. Every Monday, they bring their team together. Every Monday. You want to talk about a resourceful meeting, delivering huge ROI? Every Monday, his team comes together and he starts where? At the front desk, because that's where the patient journey starts. They deliver their KPIs. Then the face of the company, the person sitting at the front desk, delivers their KPIs. Then the providers deliver their KPIs. Then billing delivers their KPIs. They talk about any issues, any problems they're having at each of those steps. And then the meeting's over. So he brings the team together and talks about and so the providers get to hear the front desk sharing, right, their results and their issues. It's huge.
Well, otherwise you're fixing it, 1-2 quarters down the road.
You got it, man. You got it. By the way, this is real quick. This is the owners and call. I need you to help me with my cancel calls. And I go, so do you want help with a cancel call, or do you want to stop the call altogether? Right? I spent 20 years trying to fix cancel calls. Guess what? Never changed until I took the mindset of, I've got to get these calls to stop. That's what these two people are doing that I talked about. They've managed to bring their team together, and the providers know the value of what's going on up here and the conversations and how it's helping them with their cancels and drop-offs, right?
And I've heard you talk cancel calls before, but maybe for people that haven't heard like what that process looks like or what that means, can you maybe fill them in a little bit?
Yeah. So again, if we're thinking about this bigger picture, so we have a completed plan of care. Well, in order for someone to complete a plan of care, we got to have a baseline level of cancels, right? So roughly I look at it as any one patient going through a plan of care is going to cancel, meaning I might even argue move their appointment. I'm doing a lot of work on this right now, 2 times. Okay. And so you just budget that in, and that becomes the benchmark. And so you define what it takes to get a completed plan of care. And one of them is they only cancel 2 times, right? So we get the mindset that in order to have a completed plan of care, we can't have someone canceling 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And the front desk just being made to, you guys have to manage cancels, right? So the goal here in my world is not to manage a cancel call. I train people on how to do that, but I spend very little time on that because we spend all the time and energy and effort on how to make sure we set people up for arrival. We're always training how to prevent the negative. I'm like, why don't we just train to how to get the positive?
For sure. And I think that's something people need to prep for even more as we come out of pandemic and people's schedules. I know ours, like everyone else's, looks like 2019 again. And, you're being pulled every which way. So we've seen, I think across the board in clinics that I consult with as well, we've seen, uptick 1-2% just in people being busy and like putting too much on their plate, and then traffic increasing again. So
Right.
Yeah. And then they can't come in at any time of day like they used to, like when people were all remote or locked down, they were, I'll come in at 10:45. It's no big deal. Now it's like, we're back to those early morning and late nights being really, really sought after appointment times. once again. Maybe while we're on that topic of cancellations, just in general, and without getting us too deep in the weeds, but
Yeah, I'll go. We can talk for an hour on drop offs. We can talk for an hour on cancels. We can talk for an hour
let's
on
go drop
arrival.
offs next. But cancellations, do you have thoughts on? I know we had a couple of questions in ahead of time.
Oh yeah, get ready, buckle up, kids.
Like what a good cancellation rate looks like, and then the idea of cancellation fees or how to implement that.
Yeah. So by the way, yeah, here we go. So I think a cancel rate in general, right, across the board should be below 10%. Now, here's what I found, as we all love to do. I stopped asking people their cancel rate because everybody manipulates it to look good. So I ask people their cancel rate and they're like 5%. And I go, wait a minute. So what I've asked people, how many cancel calls do you get a week? Mm-hmm. Right. So that's really what we want to know, because everybody manipulates the hell out of it. But I'm saying that less than 10. So by the way, that means spots on the schedule. So that means if Ben is scheduled at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, he's there at 10 o'clock. Well, Ben canceled that and showed up 3 o'clock on Friday. So we don't call that a cancel. I'm like, it's a cancel call. Right. So it has to be 10% or less for that number.
Yeah. Would you see that the capacity would be somewhere in that same range? You want about 85 to 95% capacity?
Yeah. Right. So, yeah. So I call that. So I've got one of those clinics I just referenced in that example who meets weekly with the team. They came up with an efficiency rating, which I love. He came up with it on its own. They actually count. They not only count the number of slots filled on a Monday, they look at the names. So you want a true reading of the work to be done? How many of those people, right? How many of those slots were clicked arrived with the same people that were in there on Monday morning at 6 a.m. by Friday at 8 a.m. or p.m. I'm saying by the end of the week. So he's starting to measure that. Because here, let's back this up again. If you really want to be efficient and you really want to scale a business, and by the way, you want to show some insane value when someone shows up to buy it, start making sure, and by the way, that's a broad term, start making sure that you put people in the slots that they're going to arrive for, which is back to don't put people on the schedule that aren't going to arrive.
Right. It takes some discipline too, right?
Oh yeah, it's hard as a business owner. Put everybody on the schedule. I'm like, yeah, that's sweet. That 30%, vacancy rate, let's call it, right? Yeah, that's sweet. Put everybody on the schedule. And by the way, oh, what a coincidence. Your front desk team is turning over and over. Really? I wonder whose fault that is.
Well, you look at the sheer amount of work for that, the amount of calls and emails for that. And your thoughts maybe on cancellation fees. I know you and I talked a little bit beforehand what we do, but what are you seeing best practices around the country, around the world, because you do international stuff?
So here's what I see very few people doing, which is what I believe needs to be done. We need to reward arrival, not punish cancels. So if you guys take everything I said, and I understand that there are patient objectives to be met here, if I understand the research about delivering to patients what they want based on the research, if I understand about the connectedness of my business, if I understand about who my target client is and I'm attracting them to my company, then I say a 0 cancel rate is the only way to go, because you talk to people about arrival and you expect 10% or below anyway. So as long as that doesn't fade up, it doesn't mean you don't have conversations with people. But there's so many reasons. And this starts on the first phone call. So we tell them why they should arrive, not why they shouldn't cancel. Those are two different conversations. And if I'm selling an expert who can deliver, not an outcome, we don't promise outcomes. If I'm selling an expert who can deliver to you a plan of care and that you buy into this expert, and then I honor the fact, this is what else I hate about PT owners, by the way, I'm one, so I'm telling you me, is we try to get to the 0 sum. And it's like the day I let go of the fact that cancel rate will never be 0 was the day I said, you know what? I'm not rewarding the right thing here. So that's my world. And that's what I work towards. I work towards less cancel calls, not less cancels.
What when can you maybe walk us through drop off and kind of like what you like to see there, and then maybe I guess a subsequent question to that is who kind of owns that besides
Oh yeah, that's good. Well, I'll definitely answer that. You know, it's funny. I wish I could see everybody's face right now. I hate this webinar function, but it is what it is. I wish I could see everybody's face right now, because the question I want to ask everybody is, who owns drop-offs? And it's a rare day when I go, you know, so let's say it's changing. Everything's changed over time since I started this. So more people are answering in the direction that I like, which is, who owns drop-offs? And it's like, well, my front desk owns drop-offs. I'm like, how? Why?
because they took the call, Jerry.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, okay, well, no. My providers own it, but my front desk gives them. Thank you, Caitlin. My front desk gives my providers the list of their patients that dropped off, of which you're going to get this from me. Long drawn out dead air, because you're going to get uncomfortable shit. And I'm going to go, your providers don't know that the person they were in charge of, the person they were going to build a professional relationship with, the person they were managing their plan of care, they don't know that person's not on their schedule. I'm like, I think we found the problem.
Right.
So that's my provider. Visit. So here, and the delineation is not arrival. The delineation is about visit 2, because what I found is people who drop off from evals and after visit 1, their expectations were not set properly by the front desk. So the provider shows up and delivers on what they would do and the way they would do it, and the front desk didn't do the right work to set up the expectation of what to expect from that provider. So after visit 2-ish, I go to the providers. Before visit 2, I go back to the front desk. And when I say go back, it's just like, hey, let's look at this, right? One doesn't make a trend, right?
And definitely on the back end, when you're talking like a longer rehab, you know, ACL recovery, that sort of situation, the PT or the provider in any healthcare system totally owns that. Because you even see, you know, even people with their orthopedic surgeon, they don't know, am I supposed to go back? I don't even know. It's like, how do you not know? Like, well, they didn't tell me to reschedule, or, you know. So I think the PTs that don't kind of walk the patient out and they just kind of, you know, let them kind of figure things out for themselves at the front desk, they're kind of a little bit lost. They're in a little bit of hurry, and then many times they never remember to schedule again. So, but I think with the way the reporting is now in most EMRs, like, to avoid these drop-off lists, like, it's pretty easy for PTs to reach out via email or phone or even text, and, you know, some of the texting, HIPAA-based texting systems, and kind of say, hey, is everything going okay? Do you need anything? You know, there's really less excuse than ever in that regard.
So let me give you a tangible take-home example of this. So I started working with a client, multiple sites, most of them in network, not all of them, but most of them were in network. So when we started, we were looking at changing this drop-off. So one of the very first things he did, I kid you not, within the first 30 days we worked together, is he took 15 minutes of admin time. So it cost him $0 to do this. He was already giving his team admin time, which was awesome, right? He took the admin time and he called it lost patient follow-up time. Okay. So yes, the front desk gave them a list, yet the list was prioritized. It wasn't people that dropped off 6 months ago. It was like people dropped off last week. His team started calling these drop-offs to, by the way, his provider's team. So the person who was treating him started calling these drop-offs. The ROI was 5 figures. It was greater than 10,000, less than 20,000. So somewhere, let's just say $15,000 a month in revenue recaptured. That's if anybody knows my stuff, that leaky bucket, that's the leaky bucket.
It's a huge.
So they were recapturing. We could talk, remember, there's business, patient success leads to business success. So it just took the provider calling them back, and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot to call you back. Or, you know what? Yeah, this is still giving me a problem. Well, why shouldn't those people be on the schedule being taken care of? And now they know someone's looking out for them. Now they know someone cares.
Right. Well, I think like,
yeah,
like we mentioned, like you can get a list, everybody listening, you can get a list from pretty much any clinic. You can run a report of these people that are falling off. And I will say, to the provider's defense in this as well, is that especially at a higher volume clinic, which some people are out there, is that, yeah, you may have 200 or 300 people that have quote unquote an active plan of care. It's not really active if they're not coming in, but it's hard to kind of even remember everybody if you've only seen someone for 2 visits and they haven't been in for 5 weeks. And so you need to look at that list and familiarize yourself with the names and kind of get after it. What we do, just from our practice standpoint, we run a weekly inactivity list. And so anyone who doesn't have a visit scheduled in the next 10 days, we reach out to them and kind of try to address that. Maybe it's by design, it could be late in rehab, but we want to make sure there's a reason for it, not just.
So my goal, I told my team, so just to prove to everybody, it's not about the almighty dollar. I created this and told my team, we had to be the last touch point. You, the provider, had to be the last touch point. So the reason for the call was not to get people back on the schedule, even though people did. It was a small percentage of the total calls. I said, I don't care if I said, I had to go back through anybody's chart and see that if someone called and canceled or dropped off, we were the last 2 touch points. It had to be call and email or email and call. I was like, that's it. Now, if you got them on and you re-engage them, high five. But maybe that was about 10%. So this was made out of no one was allowed to come into our ecosystem and disappear without us being the last touch point.
Yeah, no milk cartons.
Yeah, exactly.
No
and
flatter.
So again, this is that bigger connectedness mentality and that disconnect you asked about earlier, right? So the front desk people, the clinic managers, again, how would you like to recapture, $10,000 a month in revenue?
Right.
The good news is it's by taking care of patients. So
by completing the job. And I think that the completion of plan of care is, I think it's one of the metrics you'll see at some conferences and stuff too, is like 10.1 visits per diagnosis or per case. I think that's kind of the wrong way to look at it. It's really kind of that follow-up surveys. Did you get back to the goals that you had set as a patient or client? And that's kind of your completion of plan of care. For some people, it's going to be 4 visits, and some people it's going to be 24. It depends on so many different factors there that the therapist has to kind of weigh. Maybe going back to your first phone call questions, how do you like that first call to maybe sound? What is that? Maybe kind of walk me through what you think is a great call. Or I know you kind of touched on like taking the patient's information, but what is that? Is there an order you like to have things kind of laid out?
Yeah. And in my world, it has to be this order. So this is my church. So if you guys sign up, right, it's got to be in this order. So you got to believe the things I believe. Surprised I don't go to church on Sundays. Because I created church. There's a 5-step process. And what I have found, it is, by the way, if you claim to be an evidence-based practitioner, you're sitting in front of a guy who hasn't read a lot of research in his life, but I have read probably more expectations research and more therapeutic alliance research than you. So I'll leave it at that. And I'm not saying I know more than you, but man, I've really immersed myself into the expectations, the alliance, the kind of the psychology, the sociology of the people we work with. And again, I'm not saying I know more than you, but just to give me a little validity here. And I've structured a conversation around the years of this research. Bishop, Belaski, Maximichek, Giacomo. I mean, all these people doing this, I've been in touch with them, right? Probably made a couple of them uncomfortable because I was always stalking them, trying to get more answers from them. What about this? What about this? This 5-point structure is based on giving people 2 things. It's based on collecting all the business information we need. I told you guys, right? I run a business. I like to make money, right? So we got to meet the business objectives while making the whole conversation about the person on the other end of the phone. Now, if we start from that mindset, magically, that takes us down the path we need to go. And so the reason it's in the order it needs to go is people want an expert, research proven, who will give them a diagnosis per the research. But for what we do, I say, tell them why they can't do the things they want to do, and then gives them a plan. And I'm like, that's a physical therapy evaluation, right? And I read all this stuff and I pulled all this stuff together. And you and I both know everybody loves to share the communication everybody wants. And I'm like, but that doesn't help us. We all know empathy is important, but what do they want from us? They want those three things, right? Because by the way, you can talk to someone as nice as you could be the most empathetic person they are. If you're not perceived as the expert who can help them with the problem they want to be solved and give them a plan, the empathy and all the communication skills do not matter, my friends. So the 5-point structure is put it in an order that I can make this conversation completely about you while taking care of the business side of it. And what I need to do throughout the whole conversation, I'll give you the 5 right now, and I'll do it in under a minute, is I need to acknowledge everything I hear. The power of that, the longer I do this, that's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and played a larger role. So I do secret callers. I listen to calls every day. I listen to new patient calls every single day, and I do my secret callers. So I've heard the impact of this work, and I did it myself too, right? So acknowledgement, then we need a problem to be solved, not goals. We need a problem to be solved. Then we need expectations. Have you had physical therapy before? Yes or no? What worked? What didn't, right? What do you expect from us? That what do you expect from us is the most undervalued, biggest ROI of this whole freaking conversation. If you tell me what you expect from us and the front desk says you'll get that here, then you've done probably 75% of the work. I then need to make sure they know they're seeing an expert who can help them in their journey, or at least give them the information, that they need to understand their journey back to the problems to be solved. This all builds on itself. I then need to make sure they know what they're going to get for their time, money, and energy on that first visit. I then need to know how do they want to pay, and then I need to recap. And the recap is a why they should arrive recap. It's not the paperwork recap that everybody does. So if you do those 5 things on every phone call, you will be insanely successful with patients' journeys. I guarantee it.
Yeah, that's all really, really great advice. There's kind of a follow-up from one of the webinar attendees, and that's, do you recommend the provider reach out personally, or is it okay to have the front office reach out for the provider if the patient has no more appointments before the plan of care is complete?
Yeah, good question. So here's the deal on this, right? Is the provider owns this relationship after arrival. So at this point, what I would expect of someone is someone that needs to be called by them should be called by them. Depending on the relationship, again, right? You own this relationship. You know your patients. So if you want the front desk to call and you say, look, call Mrs. Smith, tell her that, tell her these 3 things and tell her I want her back on the schedule. Well, you own that relationship. The front desk knows what to do to get this person back on the schedule, and we're done. Now it's your responsibility to follow up and see what happened with the phone call, but there's nothing, right? You own the relationship. It doesn't mean you can't delegate, but we come from this of a position that you own the relationship.
Right.
And only then can you delegate, right?
Yeah, I think from a professional alignment standpoint too, I know that we have a really great attorney locally here who has it's a large group, but they've done a good job of not losing that personal touch. So I think in this scenario, I'd like to think of ourselves, on par professionally with physicians and attorneys and accountants and that sort of thing, is, I can reach out to him, he'll reach back to me, and he'll be like, my office will give you a call and get you on the schedule. So he's not doing the scheduling component, but he's still in communication. I know that he, like you said, owns what could happen and owns the kind of the resolution of whatever situation we may have, whenever we're planning our processes that we're doing. So
yeah, so there are not a lot of absolutes. I know it sounds like I'm speaking in absolutes, but the absolute is the person on the other end of the phone has to hang up and know why they should arrive. There's an absolute. Now, how we do that We follow that 5-point structure. You notice I didn't call it a script. There are no scripts. It's a conversation. So the absolute is get these 5 things in a manner that the conversation flows, that you're selling value before price, so that the person hangs up and goes, wow, that was different. Mm-hmm. Wow, I called the right place. I'm glad I called them. Boom, we're done. We're done. We're done. You did your job. And now you follow through on the next couple of steps. And part of that, again, get their expectations, setting the provider up for success, selling the expert means you tell them what to expect from that expert. Blah, 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 blah.
Right, right. Do you think, one of the things that we've, as a group, have been moving towards is kind of improving that payer mix? I know a lot of people are around the country as well. When you have larger deductibles, or say someone who is now out of network, what's that conversation? But obviously you're going to come in the same scenario that you just described, but is there anything unique or niche about those conversations? They want to bill insurance, but we're not going to take it. Or it's a completely cash pay thing. I know you're doing a lot of cash pay consulting as well. Is there any kind of pearls you have there?
Yeah. I just want to put a little asterisk here and a big caveat. The most successful of my clients are in-network clients. And I think I need to mention that every once in a while, because everybody thinks, oh, this process is for an out-of-network. And I'm like, no, it's for everybody. This process is payer and practice model agnostic. It doesn't care. It doesn't care. I've worked with PEDS clinics. I've worked with mobile clinics. I've worked with musculoskeletal clinics. I've worked with hybrid clinics. And then on the payer side, I've done in-network, out-of-network cash PT. I've done people hand out super bills. I've done no insurance. The structure and the model is exactly the same. Back to Ben's question, when I roll in, I say, so Ben, how do you all hear, right? Let's say Ben and I are working together and we're doing our first meeting. The first thing I tell people is, I'm not here to change things. I'm here to make it more efficient and frictionless. So take me through the process of an initial contact to an arrival. And so in that process, Ben's going to tell me when they get the insurance information, when they promise a callback, what they do with that. And I'm going to work with them on how to make that most efficient. Maybe, just maybe, I might recommend someone, they might want to move the conversation up, but I never tell anybody you should go out an hour. I never tell anybody you need to do it this way. I will have a conversation around some things, but I'm not here to change his model. I'm here to make it more efficient. Ben knows his clientele. Ben knows his community. Ben knows the people he's treating. Ben knows his team and the culture he hired them into. So I'm not there to drop. I'm there to go, okay, Ben, how are we going to manage this? So that is the answer to the question. And if you guys notice on that 5-point list, number 4, if I'm not mistaken, was how do you want to pay? So the point here and the magic of all of this is not to bring up price if they didn't bring it up first. You're going to bring it up 4th. It's in the 4th position for a reason. Everything is there for a reason. So when someone asks you about price or in network, we acknowledge it. Remember, acknowledge. Yet we want to keep control of this conversation. So we're going to ask them some clarifying questions and ask them if we can get back to that. And I'm going to tell you, it's successful 80% of the time. So the clinics who tell me people only want a clinic where they're in network, I'm going to call bullshit immediately, because I listen to calls. I've done those calls and I train people to flip the conversation, and it happens. So it's interesting how many front desk people have said all people care about is the insurance. I say, that's interesting. Out of the 5 calls I listened to, you and your team brought up insurance 4 times before the patient did. There was only 1 call where the patient brought it up first. So this mindset, right, that we put these people in, that we get, remember I told you guys the business objective, there's, right? When a patient calls, I'm not going to, again, we can go forever. When a patient calls and says, do you take my insurance? What they're telling you is, I have no idea what you do. When a patient calls and says, how much will it cost? They're telling you, I have no idea what you do. It is your job to tell them that you will get them their costs. Yet what's most important, Jerry, is I make sure that our clinic, Lake Washington Physical Therapy, is the best fit for you. And I would like to do that first and then get you your cost. Will that work for you, Jerry? I'm going to tell you right now, people, 75, 80% of the time, it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
so that's the structure, right? And that's how we neutralize the cost conversation. If they don't bring it up, we bring it up. We do not hang up without having it.
it's because it's
we
part
bring it
of
up
the expectation setting is
mm-hmm.
part and parcel of that too. And I think,
So
we were talking about that a little bit ahead of time. Like my dad, when getting his second round of cancer treatment, he was at a capitated system, which will remain nameless, and the quality of care was not very good. And we chose to pay out of pocket to go see Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, just because the expertise and just it was a night and day experience. And so I think that's where, if you're providing that experience as a clinician, and you're providing, like you said, meeting expectations and goals and outcomes and all those factors that we strive to, then I think the cost seems small for most folks. Like that's
day and age, I got to tell you, and don't bring up the recession, don't bring up inflation, please, because if you think your patients, this is what's interesting. Recession didn't make people deprioritize their health or prioritize their health. The inflation didn't make people prioritize their health or deprioritize. So I love these posts. What are you going to do now because of recession with your business? I'm like, I'm going to talk to people the same exact way I talk to them. I'm going to make sure they understand why they should prioritize us over anybody else, and then allow them to make a decision that best fits them.
Right.
But I was doing that 10 years ago, and I'm still going to do that today. So this whole idea about insurance and price and inflation and everything, it's like, by the way, it doesn't matter if you're selling shoes, if you're a restaurant, if you're healthcare. How do I make sure people understand they should prioritize me? Follow me here, because I'm not telling them to drop other priorities. How do I make them understand they should prioritize this, and then make sure they can check all the boxes to go, I can do that or I can't. And I don't argue with them if they say they can't.
Right.
But if we didn't check all the boxes, right? This is the default. Oh, they said no because we're out of network. They said no because of price. I'm like, did you check all 5 boxes? Well, and I listened to the call and I'm like, no, you didn't. So they objected on price for a product. They have no fucking idea. And I said, I'd only curse maybe once. They had no idea what they're buying.
That's good. That's the first F-bomb in our webinar series. That's good.
Oh yeah. Ask Ben. He had to sit through me getting them all out of my system early.
7/14, 22. No, I think the key is like prioritizing the expectation of PT for folks, and making it a staple, not a discretionary income item.
And
because it is.
Yeah. And so it's really important, because I'm a sales guy, right? If you guys could see my bookshelf, I got more sales book than any healthcare person, but I will tell you this, it is never our job to convince people. It is never our job, get ready, to change people's minds. It is our job to make sure people understand what we can deliver to them for this price, and then step back and say, what questions do you have of me?
Right.
And let them choose. We over own the outcome. Get them scheduled, right? It's so funny, get them scheduled, zero accountability for arrival, because that'd be way too much pressure for that clinic.
Yeah. What do you think the reason is for not achieving those 5 points? Is it, besides the training component, is it time? Is it resources for the front?
I think I wouldn't go to any of that till I said, if someone hasn't been told, the accountability is arrival. So you get dropped into your seat. Probably some of the people watching this, I see you, by the way. I know who you are. You got dropped in a seat and you were told to what? Get people scheduled and fill in these lines in the EMR. So what are you going to do? You're going to get people scheduled in an efficient manner, get them on the EMR, and hang up, because that's what you were told to do. So yeah, I won't even go into the other stuff. And this is why I've never met a friend. So people go, oh, how'd the secret caller go? Was it bad? I go, well, no, they delivered exactly what you trained them for. So it doesn't matter what the result is. It's what you train them to deliver.
Right.
Oh, I knew it was going to be like that. I go, I know, because you didn't can train them. Yeah, and I get passionate about this because we're taking this person that's so remember, I'm a provider. We're taking this person that's so valuable. I call them the entry point to the business. I onboarded a brand new front desk team. Within the first 6 minutes, I said, you are the most important cog in the wheel of patient success. And I said, if you guys aren't ready to own that, we're going to have a hard time together. Because as a provider, I'm going to tell you, without you, patients don't get better. Because why? They don't show up. They drop off. They cancel. They no show.
Well, and there's a reason too for us when we have highly successful front desk people, is those end up being our future PTs. So I think I might have shared with you before in the past, but so about 75% of our clinicians are former front office aides. So
Yeah.
they know that journey. So
Yeah.
I think it does a couple of things. It gives you that appreciation for the role.
Mm-hmm.
Also makes you aware of what's going on up front.
Mm-hmm.
So it's their job to stay in contact. And I think there's less hierarchical kind of separation or siloing going on. So I think
I like siloing. I think silo is the word there. And I tell, right, everybody has siloed their healthcare practice,
right,
providers and others.
Yeah, everybody. I don't do that. I'm it's like role related.
Well, again, yeah. I think I said this earlier, but I had a good laugh, and I'm going to say it again with this front desk team I onboarded. And I go, you guys own all the negative KPIs, and the providers get all the positive ones. Completed panel cares, everything, right? Go to the providers. What did front desk own? I think I said this already. Drop off, cancels, no shows, right? And I'm like, oh, missed, right? Screwed up insurance, right? All this stuff. And I'm like, isn't that cool? We had a good laugh about that.
Yeah, providers get the rosy Google reviews and brownies,
So I make, by the way, the people I work with, I make them send a 3-part NPS. So based on your experience with us overall, rate it right below it. Based on your experience with our front desk team, rate it. Based on your experience with the provider or provider team, rate it. So, and then I bonus on the provider. I bonus on the individual ones.
Right. That's great. We I think, we do a survey that we send out automated for the first visit, the 4th visit, and the 12th visit.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of people I talk to, they do not do any surveys. And I know it's tough to look at them sometimes, but I would say the majority of them are great. And then
I turn it into my marketing.
Yeah. It's also more of your actionable things like, hey, the copay is not showing up on this one form, or, let's change that right away. We can be really responsive, and instead of, being a little more proactive and kind of correcting things before you have multiple complaints. It's right at 1:00 right now. You got all the questions answered from everybody sending ahead of time, as well as from the Q&A. Is there anything you want to leave us with? Maybe a teaser for the second part, or anything that we missed today?
Yeah, let me just share one thing. It's going to be less than 2 minutes, okay?
Yeah, no, it's your time.
Let's do this. We're going to go here and here. And just tell me when you can see my screen.
Got it. Yep.
Okay. I want you guys to think about, this is the visualization. Oh boy, I'm not even going to say it again. This is a picture of a patient life cycle. So this is that middle thing. This was actually the first thing I did. And I told you the correct order, right? It took me a lot longer to get here than 1 hour. So this was the first thing I did, and it still applies. And what I love about this is 2 things. It's the high level journey of a patient through a business. If we move a couple of these around, it's everybody's healthcare practice. And that golden moment is that first touch point. They reach out to you, you get a fax, a referral, they click on the Facebook ad, it doesn't matter, they walk in. That's that golden moment. The red is the touch points, high level, that a potential patient has to go to until they arrive in the orange. Okay. So this is a patient's life cycle, right? Every one of these colored portions equal a phase of that life cycle. And every one of those portions has an owner. You hear me reference that, has a goal. I reference that, right? Really the ultimate goal of the first one is arrival. And then they have a metric of success. And then they have all the systems and processes that go into that. I want to break this down one further for you guys as we move into next week. So, right, this is the 3 selling phases, or the 3 sell cycles of this patient's life cycle, still owned by the same people. But you notice what happens here is, look how long this first sell cycle is, right? And we see the impact of the front desk team. And again, the goal here is arrival to what? To set, this is the beauty. Really, this whole sell cycle, the evaluation is 1 hour roughly, right? Whereas this first sell cycle could be weeks, days, months, which cracks me up when I ask people, what do you do with your patients after they hang up? I'm like, you have all this opportunity to build trust, to manage and set expectations. Could be emails, could be phone calls, could be whatever, could be sending them videos, could be whatever. You have this huge opportunity in phase 1 to set the provider up for success in phase 2. And then once you get, the ultimate metric here is an agreed upon plan of care. And then step 3 is the course of care. And the ultimate metric is a completed plan of care. So I just want you guys to see this so you guys understand the visualization of it.
Yeah, maybe something that's kind of lost on folks too. I know that you do a lot of marketing, and I know I do a lot of marketing as well.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Just the getting to the golden moment in the contact is a lot of work from all all parts of at least our company. I think most companies, where you're writing blogs, you're doing content, you're at events, you're doing all these things. So to kind of miss that opportunity is kind of heartbreaking for those of us that are on the marketing teams. So so that training component really plays a big part of making sure there's success, and when they make that first point of contact with your front desk.
So this is basically the template for a successful business, and it really overlays that patient life cycle. And the attraction phase is the marketing that Ben, thanks for bringing that up, Ben, is the marketing that Ben referred to. So that sell phase starts right at the golden moment. And then that excite and retain is the course of care. So really that selling is going on right through all 3 phases. So there's a lot of overlap here with this is again, just the blueprint for a successful business. This is what every successful business does on the face of the earth.
Right. And I think there's actually some self-selling for the actual client, the prospective client too. Once they've bought into, hey, I read Jerry's bio, I watched Jerry's webinar about shoulder,
which you can do, right? You can push that all out in phase 1 to increase that trust, right? Because remember, we're working towards, I call it team alliance, right? Therapeutic alliance is so ego driven. I sat down one day and I was like, only healthcare could have taken a word alliance, right? Building trust and brought it down to one specific person. I'm like, I love it. So now I read all the team alliance, and I'm actually talking to some researchers, and we're looking at a way to start studying this. People who go through this journey, are they more likely to be successful, both economically? So looking at the impact to the system, all of it, but looking at the journey, not the one touch point.
Yeah. One thing too, just as a little pearl that we learned, at least these last couple of years, we've rolled out a couple of different types of technology, one for bill pay, one for online booking, that sort of thing, is that by creating, we have like a HIPAA encrypted G Suite, and be able to have documents that we share, front office, clinicians, owners, managers, all together, and be able to put comments in. It really kind of levels, one, people can kind of do it whenever their admin times are at work. They also can do it after hours. They can also do it on weekends. But then people that maybe are more reserved in an in-person group meeting have some of the best input. So we found that our more introverted individuals, you can give us great insight and kind of streamline our processes. So we had some kind of living documents that morphed significantly from the time that I wrote them, with my own vision and my own biases, to having 20 people all put their input into it. It made a big difference.
Yeah. And you know what? I want to tie that back to, so this is really important, tying that back to that example of the clinic I work with that brings the team together every Monday, right? So this is an opportunity. He's got a pretty good sized team, but everybody's got to sit together and share in front of everybody. Now, I get it. And what people have to understand, my team, when I try to do some of this, the low achievers would come to me and go, "You're trying to make me feel bad." I'm like, no, I'm trying to make sure you understand the process and hear the people that are successful also, to go to them to look for some guidance. So we're always going to have this, yet we get back to the stuff Ben just shared, right? The stuff I just showed you should be part of your hiring and interview process. So that I want people who are going to come in and want to be a team player. I want people that come in. I want the front desk team to know their role in patient success. Right. I don't care if you're interviewing for a billing position. Everybody's like, everybody? I'm like, who doesn't? By the way, if someone comes in and says this place looks dirty, you don't think the maintenance team should know their role? I'm like, come on, people. So what Ben's saying, right? The shared how people's voices get heard. We understand your role in the bigger picture of patient success, which flows down. So it goes patient success. Patient success leads to business success, which leads to individual success.
And you know what? And, about that is too. Yeah. If there's input being kind of integrated from all members, then everybody owns the collective goal more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
Like, oh, this is Jerry's policy. I don't know, why we're doing this.
Right. And we're back to the drop-offs and the cancel things and about who owns it. And they pull up this and they pull up that. Well, guess what? As long as everybody understands the provider's own drop-offs, right. If the front desk is going to print out the last appointment schedule sheet, then what they're doing is supporting the providers to help them. And by the way, how many calls do you want to do every Wednesday before you start putting in some proactive work? Not to give to people. You see, there's a method to the madness here, people. So these are just like the cancel calls. I don't want people spending all admin time on Wednesday calling drop-offs. I want to get rid of the effing drop-offs.
Right. One of the things that we do too is we go through, and it can be kind of a painstaking effort because it's not simple in some EMRs, but is to make a note on each appointment when they have one appointment left. So that discussion begins to happen from the therapist and the patient before it's
So right, all these things. So all of a sudden you guys are sitting around calling and you're going back to management or the front desk team going, hey, make sure you tag my patients 3 visits before the end. So, and now you're being more proactive. And now on Wednesday, when everybody else is calling people, you're getting some charts done. You're doing what you need to do.
Well, I mean, just like in your practices too, our clinician, so many of them are very popular where they're booked out 4, 6, 8 weeks.
Oh yeah.
You really have to plan ahead, or you're going to be on the wait list. And that's a not always the best place to be.
Yep. I gotta, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just looked down at the clock. I got to jump on another call.
It's happy hour. I know it.
Yeah. Big time. I got to jump on another call.
I truly appreciate the time. We'll be in touch with all the members and the people attending for when the next one will be scheduled for pay. But great conversation. Enjoy having you. Always fun to connect. And if you have questions, Jerry, I'll have his information in the show notes as well as on our social media channels, so you can reach out to him directly. And we hope to see you at the next one. So thanks again for your time. I appreciate it, Jerry.
Thank you very much. Hey, right. Ben, I will email you this evening so we can catch up and debrief a little bit. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.